Good afternoon. After a long time, so many people have come to the class. Uday, you were online? I didn't get your name. Sunil. Surya. Which batch are you from? G4. Anyone else who has come after a long time? No? Okay. People from online? Audible, visible? Yes? Okay. Okay. What did we do yesterday? What was our discussion? What are we left with? Race and racism. What did we study under race and racism? Okay, checked your WhatsApp community. Okay, that's how it will be working. And I'll be giving you 2 more case studies today in today's class. One on high altitude adaptation. Second will be on the cultural adaptation to the cold. Okay, anybody from the hilly area here? Like you're born and brought up in a place where there's a high altitude, not from the plains. Bangalore, Mysore will be like completely on the plains. Yes, hilly area. Okay, so that is one case study about hilly area people on how are they affected with the chronic heart diseases. Okay, nothing to worry about. You are in safe hands. It's an advantage to the people from the hilly area that they don't face from chronic heart disease. Okay, so cardiac arrest, heart attack is something that you will eventually be very much away from. Okay, that's the case study. And people from plains, you don't have to worry about. It doesn't mean that you are very much prone to it. That is one case study. Second will be about the cultural adaptation to the cold. See, in today's class, what we'll be doing is just this. For example, we all have experience of different seasons throughout the year. Okay, which is that season that you like the most? Winter. Rainy spring. Okay, people who love rain, then it's like rainy season is the best for you. People who have come from Bangalore, season is best. Okay, morning you will have summer, by evening you'll have rainy, night it will be winter. People who have come from the Western Ghats. Anybody? Western Ghats? Which? Coastal Karnataka. Kerala coast. These are the people who are very much, they have that affection towards rain. Okay, so they treat rain itself as an entity. Rain is a living being for these people. Okay, so if that is the thing, then rainy season is the best. If you are a person who is very much prone to cold, AC temperature at 24, you start shivering, then you don't like winter. And if you are very comfortable with the increased temperature, then you'll be okay with summer. So these are the 3 different harsh environmental conditions that the human body should withstand. Just imagine if a body becomes resistant, or if the body becomes very much vulnerable to the temperatures above 30 degrees. Okay, if the human body wouldn't have evolved if we were in such a way that if the temperature is above 30 degrees and the human body will die, the heart will stop functioning, the kidney will stop its functioning if the temperature is above 30 degrees. Or if the temperature goes below 20 degrees, then the blood clots inside the body itself. So the operating temperature for the human body will be just 20 degrees to 30 degrees. That's all. It can't drop below 30. It can't drop below 20. It can't go above 30. Okay. But it's not the case with us. There are people who are surviving in the Siachen with minus 20, minus 30 degrees also. At the same time, we have people in the northern part of Karnataka or the Rayalaseema region of Andhra Pradesh who are surviving for around 40, 45, and Rajasthan will go up to 48, 50, 54 also. Even there we are surviving. Okay, so this is what is the next chapter is about. Ecological anthropology is just this. Clear? Yes? Now, before understanding, let's get to understand 2 important terms Polity, NRC, not for your batch. J4. Okay. As I've seen this date, let's have one question on this. Why only this date? 24 March 1971 for NRC. What is Bangladesh? What happened in Bangladesh? Okay, war happened in Bangladesh between. Okay, this is coming from post-independence. So post-independence is done. Then it's a wrong time to ask. All of you know what is NRC? At least people who have J4. By now you would have known what is NRC. Others? G4, H4, A4, L3, NRC, National Register of Citizens in Assam. Then I don't have to tell you anything. We'll get into anthropology. Just think over. How many of you have watched Ice Age? Ice Age? Yes. How many of you have heard about the stories of dinosaurs? Dinosaur, everybody, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, everybody have loved it. Okay, we've enjoyed that cinematic experience. Look, sounded like a train, railway station wala sound. Where did it come from? Okay. Just imagine if the human had not evolved. Just the example that I told you about 20 degrees and 30 degrees. If we had not evolved to sustain these temperatures, we would have got extinct. Correct? So this is a process. See, the human being, Homo sapien, evolving as the time progresses out the period. Because this is an example of the natural selection. The nature was more advantageous to one particular species over the other. And that is the reason why the human beings are surviving even today. Correct? This is one thing. Second important term to understand is something called as geographical determinism. Geographical determinism. Just think about the economic activity of a person who is in Bangalore and a person who is in a village near Bangalore and a person who is in a coastal area. Okay, three important examples. A person who is in a coastal area, his main economic organization or his main economic activity will be fishing. A person who is in and around Bangalore, or let's say in and around the banks of River Kaveri, his main economic activity will be farming. The person who is in economic activity will be usually trading, because it's an urbanized society that we're living in, and traders are the people who earn more. Correct? So what is something that is defining the economic activity here? Coastal area, around the banks of River Kaveri, and Bangalore urban area. Geography, that is nothing but geographical determinism. This is with respect to economy I'm talking about. This will revolve around culture also. This will obviously revolve around culture. For example, you are from a place where forests are revered, let's say. Okay, you have a great respect towards forest, you have a great devotion towards forest, and you consider forest to be an entity, it's a living entity, it's a god. Your culture will always revolve around worshipping trees, okay, to protect them. This will be your religious belief, this will be the part of culture going forward. But at the same time, if you are from a place where the mother god is earth, for example, a farmer's family, the god is earth or soil is considered to be more sacred than anything else. So the culture, economic activity, and also the political institution, everything revolves around the geography. Okay, so this was something that was there from a very long time period. If you talk about the human evolution, if we talk about Australopithecus, Paranthropus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, this is what they did. If an Australopithecus is born in savanna grasslands, tropical grasslands, savanna, he would adjust his lifestyle based on that grassland ecosystem. If he is born in a coastal area, he would adjust his culture, he would adjust his lifestyle based on the geography. If he is born in a fertile alluvial soil, he'll adjust his lifestyle, his culture based on that particular geography. So this is called as geographical determinism, which means geography decides your culture, your economic activity, your political activity, your way of life. Correct? This happened throughout the human ancestors time period. All the human ancestors, Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, Grimaldi, everybody, they followed geographical determinism because they did not know how to manipulate this. Okay, what did these people do? If at all, let's say it's a summer. Okay, it's a summer in Bengaluru, let's say. What do we do in summer? We turn on the AC. What will the Australopithecus would have done? He would have easily migrated to a different place. It's easy for him. He would have migrated. Just escape. He did not know how to manipulate this. If it's too cold at some time, what do? You won't migrate. From your house, you won't go to your grandfather's or grandmother's house because it's winter. You don't do it because we find our own behavioral aspects. You start wearing jacket. You'll have more sweatshirt. You will have the winter wear. Some people will even go for a shopping for the winter wear. Okay, and you turn off the AC. You have foods that are hot. You just prepare it and just eat it. And few people will also consume alcohol. Okay, behavioral changes in the diet. We all do this to cope up with the surrounding environment, but these people did not know all this. They were very raw. If this is happening to us, I will evade. I will escape so that I will find my place. But what happened over a period of time? After the evolution of the Homo sapien, we learned how to manipulate the environment. Okay, so what did we do? If it's a hot summer, we had our fans coming up. We have our AC coming up. We have the ice cubes stored in our fridges. At the same time, if it is rainy season, we'll have our raincoats. And then we'll have umbrella. If it's winter, then we'll have woolen clothing. So we started manipulating the environment. Okay, so from geographical determinism, we started manipulating the environment. So over a period of time, what happened? We went on manipulating the environment. We went on cutting down the trees. We went on surrounding ourselves with development, not environment. So now what is the situation? Throughout the last 300 to 400 years, from geographical determinism, we came to something called as cultural ecology. What is cultural ecology? Geographical determinism is when the geography will determine your culture. The place that you're surrounded with will determine your religious practice, will determine your economic activity. The geography will determine your culture. Correct? So after Homo sapiens started manipulating the environment, what did we do? Our cultural practices started manipulating the environment. Okay. Why do we eat? All of you celebrate Sankranti, the festival of Sankranti. Why do we eat only those items? What do we eat during Sankranti? What do we call it as? Yallu Vella. Okay. Why do we eat that? That's a part of culture. And we are very generous people. We don't manufacture it and we don't eat it in the house. We go on giving it to everyone in the entire street, all the neighbors, every relative. Even if there's a dispute between a relative and you, even then you exchange it. Why do we? It has become a part of our culture. Why? To manipulate the environment. Because from the winter, we are moving towards summer. So whatever the subcutaneous fat, lipid content that the body has lost during winters. So we are feeding body with lipids. We are feeding body with rich proteins so that we get regained. It's like refresh F5. That's what we do. So culture started manipulating the environment because of our intelligence. Now, throughout the period of 300, 400 years, we've been following cultural ecology. If we want firewood, we'll cut trees. If we want to build a homestay, we'll clear the entire forest. If we want to build a dam, will change the entire course of river, and we will even come out with river interlinking for our benefit. Okay, now the Karnataka government is actually proposing a dam to be constructed at a place called Mekedatu here. Mekedatu is a place where just before the Kaveri river enters Tamil Nadu, that's the place called Mekedatu. Okay, so if we construct a barrier there, then we can have a lot of water, so that even the people who drink water in Bangalore, we can supply a lot of drinking water to Bangalore. That's the plan. But if we want to do it, there's a projection that 10,000 acres of forested land would get submerged if a dam is built there. And that's a very small dam to be built. 60 TMC will be the capacity of the dam. Very small dam. And 10,000 acres of forested land would get submerged if at all we build a dam there. Okay, so we are manipulating the environment for our benefit. And what happens over a period of time if we keep on doing it? This will result in something called as climate change. That's what we are facing now. We have concentrated unseasonal rainfall, huge rainfall sometimes it's a drought. So such changes arise because we have been manipulating the environment throughout the centuries. And now, see, these are the past things. We had geographical determinism. Now, then we followed cultural ecology. After cultural ecology, over a period of time of 300-400 years, resulted in the climate change. It has already resulted in the climate change. Now, in order to cope up with the changing climate, if we don't cope up with the changing climate, then we will perish. We will die. So what is the need of the hour? We will have to adapt ourselves to the changing climate, changing environment. So that is the reason why a new branch in anthropology developed called as ecological anthropology. What will this do? This will study ecology, environment. This will study the changes brought in the human body because of the changing environment throughout the history. Okay, throughout the history, it will study different people. For example, it will study a person from Nepal. For example, let's say Madan Bhaiya. That's what ecological anthropology will actually do. It will compare. For example, me, I'm born and brought up in the plain area. Madan Bhaiya born and brought up in the hilly area. So both of us will be studied. What will we be studied for? We'll be studied for our HB count. Will be studied for our chest size. Will be studied for our heart shape. Will be studied for our heart pressure. Okay, and will also be studied for our oxygen carrying capacity in the blood. What is the oxygen carrying capacity of me? What will be the oxygen carrying capacity of Madan Bhaiya? Okay, because both are born and brought up in a completely different environment. And if at all the results say that his oxygen carrying capacity is actually more than me, then the anthropologists will come to a conclusion that the nature of the highlanders are the people who are born and brought up in the hilly area, they have more adaptation capability for the hypoxia condition, which means reduced oxygen condition. Okay, so that with this information going forward, let's say next 100 years or 500 years or 1000 years down the line, if at all the climate changes, if at all we have adverse environment for our existence, we can tweak the environment, we can find our way forward, fight that particular change and survive. Okay, that is the motto of ecological anthropology. Environment is changing, and how should we change so that we won't die? Simple. At the end of the day, ecological anthropology will help the Homo sapien to propagate the species and to grow for the next generation. Simple. Maybe we will not be alive for the next 100 or 500 years. At least the research that people are doing now will help the next generation. Understood, everyone? So, in this pursuit, we'll be studying three important different climatic conditions. One will be altitude. Second is heat. Third is cold. Okay, what will be the changes in the high altitude region? High altitude is hilly region. What will be the changes in the body and also our cultural or behavioral changes if we want to adapt to the increased temperature, what will we be doing if we want to adapt to the colder climatic situations? Okay, these are the only three things in this particular chapter. Yes, understood. So, first one. Adaptation to high altitude. Adaptation to high altitude. Okay. Before starting, we'll understand two more terms. For example, if you have been to a coastal area sometime, you will know as soon as you enter that particular environment, the first thing that the body reacts is sweating. Yes, clear? And if you have observed, people who are staying there, they won't sweat as much as you sweat. Correct? A person who is staying there from, let's say, 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, and you have just gone there for a trip maybe, and the people who are staying there won't sweat as much as you sweat. Why is there a difference? Body has been adapted. Okay, our body not adapted. Okay, anything else? This was obvious. Sudden change in the environment. And what if you start staying there for, let's say, next 1 month, and even you will get adapted? Yes, eventually you will get adapted. This will give rise to two important terms. One is something that we know, that is adaptation. Second is called as acclimatization. ACCLAMITIZATION. Acclimatization. Okay, what is adaptation? What is acclimatization? Very simple. A short-term change, a short-term or a sudden reaction of a body to the changing environment is called as acclimatization. Okay, a sudden reaction. Over a period of time, permanent changes in the body depending upon the changing environment is called as adaptation. Then the body gets confused. ये बंदा क्या कर रहा है? You should have stayed at one place, which means the body will have the memory. Acclimatization is a very sudden and a very temporary measure that happens. Very temporary, very much temporary. Let's say for a few hours maybe, or few days, very few days. Okay, then usually the body gets adapted. So you keep traveling from one place to another place without letting the body to acclimatize or adapt, then it continues. You stay at coastal area for 2 days and you come back to Bangalore. After 2 days in Bangalore, you will go back to coastal plain again. Then the body won't even get the time to acclimatize. Very much possible. But these are extreme we are talking about. A person who is very much adapted to a cold climate cannot easily get adapted to a hot climate. Cannot. Yesterday, we have seen one example of Ben Stokes and Usain Bolt or Kieran Pollard. If you have looked at their nostrils, the nostrils of the people who are living on the equator, let's say, or tropical region, plus not 10 degree north and south latitude, it's a warm air. Clear? So if it's a warm air, if the nostrils are actually bigger, it's easy for the warm air to flow because you will not have friction between the molecules. At the same time, we have a narrow nostrils. The air molecules have to rush, and in that it creates some pressure, and there is a development of heat. So these are some of the adaptations. So if a person who is in the adapted to the cold climate, a person with narrow nostrils, if he comes over to a equator and if he starts to breathe, maybe he'll have difficulty in breathing. Okay? Or a person who is adapted to a equator with wider nostrils and he goes to a polar climate or Himalayas, starts breathing, the entire nose becomes cold, it gets frozen. Okay, so these are some of the adaptations. Now tell me, how can a person be adapted to both? You should have medium nostrils. Okay, so that is how it is. Any other, anything that you have come across with such adaptations? This is something that everybody would have witnessed. What happens when you start descending on a hill, from a hill? What will happen to the ears? Gets blocked? Yes. And if you've gone while traveling on a flight, clear, you will have that pressure being blocked when you are in the high altitude. These are some of the adaptations that the body will come up on its own. We won't even know it. Studying those adaptations is nothing but ecological anthropology. And remember, all the adaptations are not only biological, because we are intelligent. We know what to do. We know when to switch the, we know when to turn on the switch and turn off the switch. Few adaptations and few measures are also cultural and behavioral. We will be studying that also. In some of the Hollywood movies you would have seen, alcohol is a common beverage. The way we have coffee and tea, they have alcohol. Okay, that is one thing. Second thing that usually that you would have seen in movies is like the house in the living room, there's a separate place where they light fire. Remember? Yes, some of the movies that you would have seen, we would have thought that that is for decoration. It's not for decoration. That's an adaptation mechanism. That's a heater. Okay, this is a cultural practice. Correct. So these are some of the things that we do. Though not everything is biological, we do something as a part of our culture also. So we'll be studying both. For the high altitude adaptation, what are the biological changes and what are the cultural changes? Okay. Anything else? Anything that you have experienced? If I reduce the temperature to 16 now, maybe people who are sitting here will have some cultural and behavioral changes. After I give a break, then none of you will be here. Everybody will go out, will go to the back bench. Or if you have a jacket, you'll be wearing a jacket. So those are some of the changes that we actually come up with. Okay, first one. Adaptation to high altitude. Adaptation to high altitude. All of you have studied geography. Geography. How does the density of the air vary with the increasing in altitude? Density of the air decreases. Instead of density of the air, we can also tell that the pressure decreases. Okay. So in order to make it more easy, I use a term called density. If the density of the air molecules reduces if you start going up, let's say, increasing in the altitude reduces the density of air molecules, how will it affect the breathing? How will it affect? Let's say this is Kedarnath peak. And you know that people who travel actually to Kedarnath, and if their age is around, let's say 50, 55, usual thing that they do is they carry an oxygen cylinder with them. because you will have to walk for around 14 kilometers and you'll have to come back 14 kilometers per day, or within 2 days or 2 consecutive days, you'll have to walk for 28 kilometers. That too, it's not a plain, it's an elevated area. And everywhere throughout the 14 kilometers, one stretch, you don't have the good way to walk. You'll also be disturbed by horses. So considering all these, people whose age is actually more, they usually carry oxygen cylinders with them. What happens is, here if the air density is more, for example, let's say air is like this here, where the density is actually more. At a high altitude area, the air becomes like this. Density reduces. This gives rise to a phenomena called as hypoxia condition. Hypoxia. Hypoxia? Reduction in the oxygen. Okay. So now think over. Let's say here, when you were at Legacy, sitting in classroom 4, per minute, let's say you required 1 kg of oxygen and you were breathing at, let's say, 72 times a minute to supply 1 kg of oxygen to your body. Okay. When you go and you were breathing 72 times to supply 1 kg oxygen, and here the density was actually more, higher density. What will happen here? Density is less, but still your body requires 1 kg oxygen per minute. If you breathe 72 times, just the way you are breathing here, you can only supply 500 grams of oxygen because of reduction in density. Okay. The first thing that happens in the pattern of acclimatization when you are on a higher altitude is that increasing in breathing rate. You would have experienced this when you start inclining, when you start climbing, or if you go on a trek sometime, you will experience this. The breathing rate increases unknowingly. We won't even notice it. We will feel that I'm tired, so I'm breathing more. It's not actually tiredness. Is that the required amount of oxygen is not being supplied in the body, so that the breathing rate increases. Clear? This is the first point. Second, just write down the one keyword, breathing rate increases, because you will have the explanation in the notes. You can refer it from there. Okay. Second, just imagine how the respiratory system works. For example, we inhale oxygen. Okay. There would be some blood vessels, veins, which would have carried the deoxygenated blood throughout from the entire body to our lungs. It would have been waiting there. And the air that we inhale, only the oxygen part of that particular blood, okay, or that particular air that we inhale, that would get into the alveoli, and then from there the exchange of deoxygenated and the oxygen happens, and the body gets oxygen and the carbon dioxide is exhaled back. If you increase the breathing rate, you are breathing at 72 times per minute. If you start breathing at 150 times a minute, the blood capillaries or the RBC that is there, even the number of the RBC should increase to cope up with the increasing in the breathing rate. So for this to happen in the hypoxia condition, the kidney will secrete a protein called erythroprotein. ERYTHROPROTEIN. TEIN, erythroprotein. What is the function of this erythroprotein is that it stimulates the production of RBC. And also hemoglobin. When the hemoglobin content in the body increases, that hemoglobin can carry more oxygen throughout the body. Done. Second point. No, just now compare. Think about a person who is born and brought up in a hilly area, whose the rate of breathing is actually more, and the oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin is also more. When he starts running, he can run 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers without getting tired, because he is very much adapted to breathing fast, and his hemoglobin is more capable of supplying oxygen throughout the body. He doesn't get tired. Yes. Okay. So this was a case study that was conducted. And what did people do after all these experiments were conducted, and people got to know that the people from higher altitudes are more capable of adapting to the faster conditions? That's when what the athletes did was that when they were practicing, they started practicing on the hills. Okay, so that they become adapted over a period of time, and once they are made to run on a plain area, their oxygen carrying capacity of the blood becomes more, and they get adapted to the higher breathing rate, and they usually don't get tired. And this was a case study that was done on the Kenyan athletes, like athletes from Kenya. So if you just look at the track record of Kenya in athletics, the people of Kenya, the athletes of Kenya are very well known for their long distance running. Up to 800 meters, 1000 meters, it's okay. Like talk about 2000 meters, 5000 meters, 10,000 meters, cross country, marathon. It's the Kenyan athletes who take majority of the medals, okay, in all the international sporting events. So there was a case study that was conducted. Read on the case study. Kenyan athletes are long, or you can write, or are tall. Kenyan athletes are tall, lean, Lean. What is lean? Slim, thin, lean, and live in mountainous region. They are adapted. To hypoxic condition. They are adapted to hypoxic condition, and thus have increased lung capacity. Okay. It becomes easy for them to outperform other athletes in most of the international sporting events. In most of the international sporting events. Okay. After analyzing this, the athletes from other countries, are practicing in high altitude hypoxic condition, HYPOXIC, high altitude hypoxic condition, so that oxygen carrying capacity would increase. Okay. I think yesterday there was a question by someone, I don't remember who asked, like, what is the application of anthropology, if I'm not wrong? Yes, someone asked. Don't you think this is an application of anthropology? Just because the ecological anthropology, we were able to study the adaptation and the acclimatization, we were able to come up with the conclusion that because these athletes practice in the hypoxia condition, they're able to outperform the others. And now it's a level playing field, that all the athletes they've started practicing in the same hypoxia condition, and now we have a level playing field, and whoever performs better will win. So this is an example of application of anthropology in the field of sports. Okay, this is one. In the field of sports, we will study many others like this. In the unit 12, we'll study many others like this. And there was one case study that became very popular. How many of you have watched Jailer? On the same lines, what happened in Jharkhand in the year 2001, 2002 was that there was a jailer, not like the Rajnikant wala jailer, but he was also a jailer. Okay, he was a jailer who was more interested in sports. So what did he do when he was in charge of that one particular small jail? Because he was interested in sports, he was a national level hockey player. Over a period of time, he started coaching the prisoners in hockey. Okay, and most of the prisoners, if you take the geography of Jharkhand is a hilly area, first of all. Second is that the majority of the people in the Jharkhand, they come from a tribal background. They're not mainstream people like us, they're tribal people. And if it's a very small case, like violation of Forest Rights Act, for example, someone is cutting a tree and there's a case on that particular person and he is in prison. So the majority of the prisoners in that particular jail were tribals. Okay, so what did this person do? A jailer who was very much interested in sports, he started teaching them hockey. And those people did not have hockey sticks. Where will the tribal people get hockey sticks? So initially they started practicing from just a firewood, just a wood, a branch maybe. They started practicing hockey with that. And there was one anthropologist who was conducting some research on these tribal people, and he encountered all these events in the prison, that hockey coaching is actually happening. This anthropologist came over and he designed separate hockey sticks for those tribal players based on the length of their forearm. See, length of the forearm will be entirely different. Okay, somebody will have a longer one, somebody will have a bigger one. So based on the length of the forearm and based on their height, this anthropologist designed the hockey sticks for them. Okay, those prisoners. In the next 5 years, from this entire prison, 6 players represented India in the international stage. That was possible. See, if they would have just played with stick, maybe they wouldn't have played for the India, they wouldn't have represented India. Anybody who watched India-Korea match yesterday? Hockey? Asian Games? So that's what happened. Anthropology, and this anthropologist who studied these people and designed hockey sticks for them, that helped them to represent India at an international stage. So this is also one of the case study where we'll be studying about designing of the equipments. Just imagine Virat Kohli batting, but wearing a helmet that is actually bigger than his head. It is not fitting him. And if he's watching a ball, he's not able to watch the ball because helmet is dropping on his eyes. He's not able to watch. He's not able to see the ball at all. Will he be able to perform? He will not be able to perform. So based on the shape of the skull, okay, when you're driving, if you wear an oversized helmet itself, you can't drive. And forget about Virat Kohli facing the bowler who's bowling at 145 or 150 km/h. And just imagine wearing a very tight helmet where your skull is getting compressed. Anybody who have faced all these situations? If you're faced, then you will know that if you borrow a helmet from some of your friend and try to wear it and drive, you will get to know. You can't. You will not be comfortable at all. So designing in such equipment, sporting equipment are also very, very important, where anthropology comes into existence. On the same lines, designing the aircraft, the cockpit of a fighter aircraft. How many of you have watched what was that Tom Cruise recently? Maverick, Top Gun Maverick. How many? Most of you? No. So just think about a fighter pilot who is driving a fighter aircraft, and in the fighter aircraft you'll just have one and a co-pilot, just two people sitting, and he's not comfortable with the seating position. He's not able to see what's happening. The space provided for him to sit is very, very small. Okay, so in all these conditions, he'll not be able to give his best. So even in designing the defense equipments, even in deciding the fighter aircrafts, the cockpit of the fighter aircrafts, anthropology comes into picture. Okay, one thing, so this you might ask, all these are not for us, sir. Tell us something that we come across for the application. See, for example, if you go out to purchase a shoe, let's say, you go for Nike, Adidas or something, Sparks, anything that you go for. How do we choose? First thing will be the size. Okay, 7, 8, 9, 10. First thing will be the size. Then you will look at color, then price, then discount. Everything comes into picture. First is it would fit you. Just think over. How will the manufacturer knows that if it is 7 size, your toe will be this much, the width will be this much, the arch of the foot will be this much? How will he know? Survey. Who does that survey? Anthropologist does the survey. Okay, so this is where in the manufacturing of the equipments that we use, where anthropology comes into picture. This is what is the term called as anthropometry. Anthropometry is the measurement of the bodily figures. So how do you measure the entire human body? Is through anthropometry. That is an application of anthropology. Okay, this is one case study for high altitude one. This is with respect to acclimatization. Okay, next, adaptation. Adaptation. Just think over. See, for these people for the higher altitude, just like Madan Bhaiya was here, I would have called him and made him stand, and it would have been easy for us to explain and you to understand. Okay, for the people of the high altitude, how will be the temperature in their environment? Cold. Okay, temperature would be very low. And if the temperature is low, the body should secrete heat to maintain the temperature, or the body should conserve heat to maintain the temperature. Possible? Whatever the food that you eat, the body should conserve that heat It should not let it into the environment so that the internal temperature remains constant. Clear? For this to happen, if the body should conserve the heat, what should be the size of the body? If the body size is more, the heat loss is more. If the body size is less, the heat loss is less. That's why Madan Bhaiya is like that. You will have people, you eat, though some people will eat like anything. They eat 4 times a day, 5 times a day, all kind of junk, but they don't put a weight. Anybody like that? Fortunate people here who eat so much but won't put a weight. Okay, see, there are people that way. We will have people that way because their body is meant to be that way. They don't put up weight. But there will be some people, just if you inhale food, it will increase the calorific value and you gain weight. You don't eat, just inhale. That is more than enough to increase the weight. Okay, so it depends on the body type. So for the people of the highlanders, that is high altitude, because they have to conserve the heat, their body size is low. Second, increase in chest size or chest cavity. Increased chest size or chest cavity. How many chambers does the human heart have? 4 chambers. What are the 4 chambers? Left auricle, right auricle, left ventricle, right ventricle. Okay. What is this? Okay, this is auricle. This is also auricle. Okay, this is ventricle. This is also ventricle. What is left? What is right? Left auricle, left ventricle, right auricle, right ventricle. Okay, this is where you have the aorta coming up from, the biggest artery, okay, which supplies pure or oxygenated blood to the entire body. Okay, so now why is this important? It was found over a period of time because of experiments that this size of left ventricle and right ventricle of a person who is born and brought up in a highlander or high altitude is bigger or more than common people. This is right, this is left. Okay, we'll keep it there. Right, left, right, left. Okay. And you don't have to write this in the exam, but all you have to write is the volume of the ventricles of a person of higher altitude is actually more compared to a person of plains. More, because they'll have to pump more blood. Why should it pump more blood? Hypoxia condition. Breathing rate is more. Hemoglobin is more. Hemoglobin is carrying more oxygen. So the cavity in the heart should also be more to pump extra blood. Size of the lungs will be small. There is nothing that way. Then the body will die, right? In the amount of oxygen in the air itself is low, and if the lung is also small, then the body will not get the required amount of oxygen at all. That's why the breathing rate increases. Okay, an example. For example, studies have shown that For example, the studies have shown that chest cavity of highland quechua, Quecha. This is not a brand of Decathlon. Chest cavity of, it's a small primitive community in America. The chest cavity of highland quechua of South America is high compared to lowlanders. 4. Shape of the nose or nostrils. How will it be? The shape narrow or broad? Narrow. The shape is reduced. Shape is reduced for better air passage. Write down this. I'll explain what this indicates. And this is y-axis, oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. X-axis, we have two. The above one is altitude, below is oxygen density or oxygen pressure. This might look very complex, but actually it is not complex. Oxygen density here is 1000 millimeter. Oxygen pressure, you can write it as. This is 500 millimeter. This is 0. This is oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, percentage of the blood. Everybody done? See, even if you're writing, listen to it and I'll give you time to write the end. We'll finish this off. Altitude at, let's say, 0 meters. In the sense, ground. Okay. So when a person is on the ground, a person is on the ground, let's say two people, one a lowlander and the other one is a highlander. Okay. When he starts ascending, for a lowlander, his body, for a lowlander, his oxygen carrying capacity will drop exponentially. As soon as the altitude increases, the oxygen carrying capacity of a lowlander drops exponentially. But for a highlander, the oxygen carrying capacity will have a very easy move. Okay, so this is a difference in the adaptation of oxygen carrying capacity of the blood between a lowlander and a highlander. Now with this graph, it's easy for us to identify that the highlander is better adapted to the higher altitude than the lowlander, because his oxygen carrying capacity in the blood is actually better. Okay, so from this graph, you can just write down 2 lines that the above graph indicates that the highlander is better adapted. The highlander is better adapted to the high altitude hypoxic condition than the lowlander. Okay, so one case study following this. Okay, case study, write down. Research conducted by a team involving the University of New Mexico. Research conducted. Have I given this? The Himalayan. Yes, it's been written. Okay, then write it down at this place so that you will not be missing it out. Or you can write down at this place, right? If you are written it down, then fine. If you have not written it down, then because this is the context. Even when you're writing the answer, because this case study is not there in the notes that I've shared. Okay, so it's better if you write it down, you will have the flow. University of New Mexico and Fudan University, Fudan, Fudan University, on high altitude adaptations in Himalayas in Himalayas and their impact on chronic diseases. High altitude adaptations on Himalayas and their impact on chronic diseases. Chronic diseases, CHRONIC. Chronic diseases. The study focused on Muso community, MUSOU, Muso community of Tibet, and they were found to have a lower risk of hypertension and diabetes compared to people of lowland area. Compared to the people of lowland area. Okay. Run the last sentence. This research illuminates the understanding of how genetic adaptations to local environment can affect the disease risk, full stop. Okay, this is one. There is one more study that I've given it in the notes of Mithali Mukherjee and Bhavna Parashar. This has been given in the notes, so you can refer to it. It just says that the people of the Highlanders, they have a particular gene, and that gene is responsible for the increased production of the RBC and also better adapted to the increased breathing rate or oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin. So this presence of gene is responsible for the adaptation. That's what the Mithali Mukherjee and Bhavna Parashar, the study in the year 2016 indicates. Okay, they have in the hypoxia condition, this gene gets stimulated, and this gene results in the increased production of hemoglobin and also better adaptation mechanism. So this is where you will have to include this study also. Okay. Now, this is with respect to the genetic adaptations or adaptation and acclimatization. Now, next thing is about cultural or behavioral. What are the cultural behavioral adaptations to higher altitude? Okay, how do we change the food habit? Okay, warmer food in the sense coffee, tea, alcohol. Okay, too much use of alcohol in today's class. Meat. Okay, higher consumption of meat. Okay, Don't you think higher consumption of meat will result in higher fat accumulation, and that results in higher heat loss? And instead of protecting you, at the end of the day, the meat that you consume is harming you. Come again? For cold, the fat burn. The fat loss happens during winter because of cold. Okay. Have you heard about transhumans? What is transhumans? Migration. Okay. Have you heard about hibernation? On the same lines. What usually happens is people of the higher altitude, what is easy thing for them is whenever it's a winter, you just come down to the plains. This is what people of Kedarnath do. How many of you have watched Kedarnath? Like, not the pilgrimage movie. Sushant Singh Rajput. Okay. So Kedarnath remains closed for 6 months. After Diwali, the next month, coming month Diwali, the Kedarnath remains closed till next March or April. It only opens in next March or April till the next Diwali. So only for 6 months in a year, the Kedarnath temple is actually open. The other 6 months it is closed. Okay. And if you just look at the thing that happens in Kedarnath between November, December and January, the entire temple will be submerged with snow, with ice. It will be submerged. What will the people do there? People will come down on the plains, they live 6 months here and then they go back. Okay, so the best thing to do for the cultural or the behavioral adaptation is transhumance. Lot of tribes do it even today during in the hilly areas. This is the easy thing for them to do. And there was a case study on this that was conducted in Spain. This is very interesting. So what happened in the case study? I'll give you the exact content. Now just listen to the story, because this is something that we can't even think about without research studies. After Christopher Columbus discovered the sea route to America, we all know that even in yesterday's class we have talked about how the Western Europe colonized the entire continent of South America and North America. In the North America, including Canada, Mexico, and US, British had their presence. In South America, it was the dominance of Spain, Spanish, and French. Okay, in South America, even today, if you just look at the borders between Brazil, Argentina, Bolivia, Uruguay, and all, you will have a lot of influence of Spanish language. Even in Florida, I had one of my friends who had been to Florida, Miami recently, and he says people there, they don't usually talk in English. The common language for them to communicate is Spanish. Okay, but they know English. Okay, it's just like you know English, but you don't talk in English on a daily basis. If you have a friend who's talking in Kannada, you will talk to them in Kannada. Correct? Agreed? So that's how it happens in Florida, that too, especially Miami. People speak a lot of Spanish there. So people of Spain colonized the southern part of American continent. In the countries of present day, Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, Peru and all, there was a lot of Spanish influence. And there, what mountains do we have in South America? Andes mountains. We have Rockies in US, that is North America. We have Andes in South America. Okay, so there came a small tribal group. When Spanish started colonizing this place, these tribal people, they wanted to escape and they settled on a hilltop. The entire tribe, entire local community settled on a hilltop. Okay, after they settled on a hilltop, for the next 50 years, there was not even a single child who was born. That doesn't mean that the women were not pregnant. Women were pregnant, but the live birth did not happen. Even if there was a live birth, the child died within 1 year. So in the next 50 years of this particular tribe called as Patoshi High, that is the name of a community that is given. For the next 50 years, there was not even a single live birth. And this community had a threat of this community will actually perish. Okay, this is the last generation. Then the next generation is they're not even taking birth. Then they got to know that because it's a high altitude condition and it's a hypoxia condition, and this community is not adapted to this high altitude hypoxia condition, the newborn children, they're not able to adapt. Okay, so what did they do? They came out with a cultural behavior. The day woman gets to know that she's pregnant, she doesn't have the right to live on the mountaintop. You try to explain them all these, they won't listen. So give them a religious belief, give them a culture, give them a behavioral aspect. The woman doesn't have a right to stay on the hilltop. So the day she gets to know that she's pregnant, she will have to come down. For the next 2 to 3 years, she'll have to stay here, away from their own tribe, away from their own family. Only after 2 to 3 years, she'll get the qualification to enter that particular tribe on the hilltop. So this became a cultural practice. Okay, and this started somewhere in the year 1600s. Even today, 2023, this has become a very integral part of their culture. But they don't know why are they even doing it, because it's been 300 years we're talking about. But it has become a very integral part of their culture. Okay, a tribe which was about to get eliminated because of the hypoxia, high altitude condition, because they got to know what was the reason. Now they made this as a behavioral practice and a part of their culture. Okay, now write down. Spanish colonists in the city of Patoshi High, in the city of Patoshi High, Patoshi High, in the city of Patoshi High, in Andes, 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 had no children because of the adverse climatic condition, for the first 54 years. For the first 54 years. Okay, hypoxic condition and low temperature, affected the fertility rate, and the child development, Hence, they culturally adopted a mechanism to migrate to lowland area during winter and during pregnancy. Okay, so this is one important case study. I think in the same question we have talked about 3 to 4 case studies. Just count the number of case studies that we have talked about. This is the first one. Second point. Look at the structure of the house. Tell me what can we understand from it. Sloping roof. Why sloping roof? Second point. Sloping roof to prevent the accumulation of ice. Okay. What else? Wooden houses. Why wooden houses? Insulation. For the purpose of insulation. Third point. They are low to the ground. Yes, that fourth point you can write down. There are no skyscrapers. At the same time, the height of the building is actually low. That is the fourth point. Third point, the principal building material is wood and not brick and mortar to give more insulation. Third point, the principal building material is wood. Principal building material is wood to provide better insulation. Is it? Is it? Is it? I didn't get the question. See, the thing is not about whether it is porous or not. Wood, because it's a natural element, it will protect the temperature better. See, if you're somebody, if you would know that if you construct a house with complete stone, during summer, you will have a very much cooling effect. You get inside a cave, you will have a very much cooling effect because here the brick and cement acts as an absorber. It absorbs heat, it absorbs cold also. So that's the reason why when the temperature is actually low, if you just touch the wall, you can feel that the wall itself is very cold because it would have absorbed the temperature. Wood doesn't act that way. Okay, that is the reason why it acts as an insulation. Lightning protection for the wood. How does it happen? Like wood is actually more prone that way, if you look at it, than cement and brick. Prone to fire. That is not a part of the culture, right? Okay. And don't assume that a modern civilized human being getting adapted. Okay, these are some of the primitive people getting adapted to it. They don't have the technology. Okay, they're doing it from ages. In the last 100 years, they're doing the same thing. Okay, so we're left with two things. One is the adaptation to heat. Secondly, the adaptation to the cold climate. We've understood these part. On the same lines, we'll be talking about the adaptation to heat and the cold. Okay, what will happen? What about termites? That will be used, and some chemicals will also be used as of now. That is there. Okay, so if you've understood this, then the next two things will also become easy. So when you have written it down, do you have somewhere around 15 marker content to write down the answer? Around 15 marker, because 4 case studies are also included. I think that will be enough. Okay, so on the same lines, we'll be talking about heat and cold. More than altitude, I think heat and cold will become easy to understand because we face it on a daily basis. Okay, so we'll take a break of 15 minutes. 3:40 will start, because when we are done with this, then the other two things are simple and we'll be able to finish it by 5. Okay. Okay, we'll continue. Next topic, adaptation to heat. Adaptation to heat. Tell me, what is the range of temperature that you feel comfortable with? 28, 25 to 45, 35. Okay, so between 25 to 35, between 25 to 35, we would consider it to be a normal one, okay, which we will be comfortable with. That is the same case with respect to the entire human being as a species. The human beings will feel very much comfortable between the temperatures of 25 to 35. That is the reason why human beings, or the Homo sapien, is a species adapted to the savanna grasslands. We are not adapted to the higher altitude. We are not adapted to the desert. We are not adapted to the polar region. All naturally, what we are adapted to is the tropical grassland, that is savanna. That's our ecosystem. Because we are intelligent, because we can manipulate the environment because of our culture, we expanded our population so much that on the earth we are somewhere around 900 crore people now, and we expanded. Though it is not our natural habitat, we expanded. Okay, first thing about the acclimatization to heat. Adaptation to heat. What is the first thing that happens whenever you get into a area where the temperature is actually more? Sweating. Okay. What a face? Okay, face becomes red. Okay. Tan. Okay, it's not an acclimatization mechanism. It's an effect. Some sort of fatigue, dehydration. If you don't drink enough water, dehydration. What else? Breathing. You will have what will you have in the breathing? You'll have to breathe more. Why is it like that? What happens in the air? Due to heat. Okay, so the air cools you. Okay, air acts like a coolant. Okay, what is lesser excretion? Okay, so these are effects. But how will the body adapt? One is the sweating that you said. Okay, we'll write that. Sweat. Okay, agreed. Anything? Before sweating. See, sweating is a secondary mechanism. Okay, the primary adaptation or acclimatization to the heat is something called as vasodilation. What is vasodilation? What is dilation? Dilation is shrinking. Constriction is shrinking. Dilation is expanding. What is vasodilation? In the sense, the blood vessels expand because of heat. When the blood vessels expand, it will help in the heat reduction or heat exchange between the environment and the body. Okay, this is the primary measure. That's an acclimatization to heat. Okay, what we're talking about is the adaptation to heat. Under the adaptation, the first point is vasodilation. What is vasodilation? The blood vessels expand so that it can lose heat into the surrounding. Okay. Second one is sweat. When do you sweat and when you don't sweat? Every time you sweat. There are some people always the hands are wet because they keep sweating every time. Anybody that way who suffer from this disorder? Not a disorder, but that's a mechanism. That's how the body type is about. Okay. And tell me one thing. Do you sweat the same way if you go to a coastal area and the desert? No. Okay. Why is it different? Where do you sweat more? Where don't you sweat? Coastal you sweat more. Okay. Desert? Okay. Why? See, the body is same. Body is same. There's no change in the body. So how will it affect? Evaporation? Humidity, evaporation, like what? Moisture content in the air is more than, even if you sweat, it just flows because it won't evaporate. In the desert, the humidity is very, very low. There's a dryness in the air. Okay. So the sweat gets easily evaporated. So even if you sweat, you won't even know that you're sweating. That will be the process. So in the sweat, we'll have to talk about two things that you already know. That's why I told you this is easy. The area where there is an increasing in the vapor pressure, that is coast. Reduction in the vapor pressure, that is desert. Write down in 1 or 2 sentences what happens in the coast, what happens in the desert. Everybody understood? Done? Everyone? Higher vapor pressure and the lower vapor pressure. Third one. The body weight. Body weight. Look at this person, the one who is standing at the center. Okay, so this is one important adaptation to the heat climate. Okay,